Hi, this is Braasch. Welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to begin a series of videos about the moral outrage industry and the many ways in which they've tried to get me killed by telling bald-faced lies about me and what happened this past spring at Yale during the now infamous living or napping while black incident. The moral outrage industry, including the press and the pundits and academics and the rest of the moral outrage warriors, including those online, are still trying to get me killed. Most recently, on March 6th, two humanities professors, one from Cornell, made grossly defamatory and false statements of fact about me, and they called me a white slave catcher enforcing the fugitive slave law. They made this outrageous claim about me in the Washington Post. A Cornell undergrad reiterated their claims about me in the Cornell newspaper. And a few days later, the editorial board of the Washington Post followed up with their own grossly defamatory op-ed about me. When you call someone a white slave catcher enforcing the fugitive slave law in the national news media, you are trying to get them killed. When you call someone a white slave catcher enforcing the fugitive slave law, you know that people will try to kill them. When you call someone a white slave catcher enforcing the fugitive slave law, you know that your target will receive death threats and threats of violence, including sexual violence. When you call someone, especially a humanities graduate student, who is also a human and civil rights licensed attorney activist, a white slave catcher enforcing the fugitive slave law in the national news media, you are trying to destroy that person's career and discredit their work and drive them to suicide, and you know that there is a strong possibility that this will happen. I can only conclude that when these two humanities professors, Edward Baptist from Cornell and Vanessa Holden from the University of Kentucky, did this, that they intended to destroy and end my life. They didn't care if I died. They didn't care if someone murdered me. They didn't care if I committed suicide. They were probably hoping for this outcome because then they would generate even more moral outrage industry profit and gain and fame and feigned moral authority. They were trying to further their careers, and they didn't care if they got an innocent civil rights activist and a middle-aged, severely traumatized woman with mental health disabilities killed. Professor Edward Baptist of Cornell and Professor Vanessa Holden of the University of Kentucky named me first in their op-ed in the Washington Post, and they grouped me with George Zimmerman, who shot and killed Trayvon Martin. You do this to someone when you're trying to get them killed. They said that I was caught on camera treating the perfectly normal behavior of black people as criminal. This is a straight-up, bald-faced lie, the only purpose of which can be to try to get me killed. They said that I was continuing a tradition from slavery, the tradition of being a white slave catcher enforcing the fugitive slave law. They said that I was eager to continue this tradition. This is a straight-up, bald-faced lie, the only purpose of which can be to try to get me killed. They said that I was treating people of color like fugitive slaves and that I should be punished for my behavior. They say that I was trying to kill people of color, using law enforcement as the killers to stop people of color from entering a place meant only for white people. This is a straight-up, bald-faced lie, the only purpose of which can be to try to get me killed. A Cornell undergrad reiterated all of these lies about me in the Cornell newspaper, the Cornell Sun, the only purpose of which can be to try to get me killed. But Professor Edward Baptist of Cornell University goes further in the piece in the Cornell Sun. He accuses me of having abused the 911 system, even though I never called 911. And he also calls my behavior insanity and says that my behavior should be criminal and that I should face legal consequences. I can only interpret these comments as meant to destroy my life and career and to try to drive me to suicide and to get me killed by inciting my murder. I also just want to say that I find it disgusting that two humanities professors would spread gossip and lies about a humanities graduate student and a middle-aged and severely traumatized woman with mental health disabilities, and would try to pass off these bald-faced lies as scholarship in the national news media, no less, to further their own careers while destroying hers and at the cost of her life. On March 11th, 2019, the editorial board of the Washington Post wrote a grossly defamatory and false op-ed about me that I can only interpret as trying to get me killed by driving me to suicide and inciting my murder. They told straight-up bald-faced lie after straight-up bald-faced lie about me and about what happened on May 8, 2018 at Yale during the Living or Napping While Black incident. They lied about the details of the event. They tried to make it seem like I was trolling the huge main common room on the ground floor of my Yale dorm for random sleeping black people to call 911 on. Then they accused me of clearly having been motivated by racial animosity, and they called me an abuser who was leveraging racial frictions for divisive purposes. They called the woman involved in the May 8th incident my victim, even though she was actually my attacker, and they said that I scarred Black Americans. Finally, they called for my behavior to be criminalized, and they called for the Justice Department to act accordingly. These are all straight-up, bald-faced lies about me. I can only interpret the behavior of the editorial board of the Washington Post as meant to get me killed for moral outrage industry profit and gain. The Washington Post has made a habit of late of defaming me in the most egregious manner to try to get me killed, and taking every possible opportunity to do so, including in a recent article about a white women-only yoga group. I have no doubt that the Washington Post is fully aware that I am entirely innocent at this point. I have no doubt that the Washington Post is fully aware that I was being terrorized in my isolated dorm room for months, including on the evening of May 7th, and that I only called the non-emergency helpline of the Yale campus police, as I had been instructed to do repeatedly by both the Yale administration and the Yale campus police, after the woman involved made statements to me that made it clear to me that she was very likely one of the persons who had been terrorizing me that evening and for months. I don't know if the behavior of the Washington Post, their repeated attempts to get me killed, has anything to do with the lawsuits brought against them by Nick Sandman and the Covington Catholic School kids, but it wouldn't surprise me. Thank you so much for spending this time with me.